All right, Frank, so the conversation topic today is exploring if the mind can be a doorway for evil.
Yes, and so my question for you, since I think that we've had this conversation multiple times, you know what? So in society we have a sect of people that do good things that are righteous, and a sect of people that fall. Do they fall through the cracks?
I feel like there's a lot of people in between, though, too.
Okay, well, there's a lot of people in between that maybe have a passion for religion
Or just being a good person sometimes.
being a good person.
Yeah.
So what we're trying to determine is humanity, are they natively evil, or is there something in the mind that becomes kind of like that is a gateway where do you agree
Some kind of negative force would basically have some kind of degree of control or influence over somebody,
right?
Basically.
Do you agree, like in the Bible it says that the great deceiver is the prince of the airways, so that he's able to influence us, right?
Yeah. Do I agree with that?
Yeah. What does
I think that there is a counterbalance to God, to where you have this supremely negative force that is as much of... God is infinite in expansion, kind of made us in his image because it's an upright star that is expanding, and that refers to the spiritual nature of the human being to be able to expand in understanding and consciousness and realization and in reality. But as far as the counterbalance, a lot of negative forces don't necessarily adhere to like one leader. Kind of like, it's not necessarily like the angels, follow what God wants them to do. But as far as the negative forces, there's a lot of negative forces beneath the material realm that can influence people. But it's not as they're very disparate. They're not as connected as the angels are to God. They're very individualized. And a lot of them, it's very hard for them to focus on this material realm. It's hard for them to basically phase in and influence people because it takes a large amount of energy to go across barriers of dimensions, basically. And the lower realms are different dimensions, so it takes a lot of energy. And for them to, and then karma is a whole other factor, to where for them to actually act would create karma. And they're already experiencing the karma of their very nature below. So when they decide to try and commit an action like influencing somebody here, the doorway has to be very one-sided, as far as the human being has to decide that they're going to let this negative force in. And that human being allows their karma to actually come into play, and the demon doesn't have as much karma coming into play as far as their particular being. The human being has to choose for this doorway to be open to, they have to be open to the influence, and they are enacting their own choice, whereas the demon is just going along the channel of energy, of influence that the human being digs. It's like the human being digs a trench to a certain source of water, right? Like an ocean or a lake. You could say the lake of fire is a channel that many human beings can dig to a channel towards within themselves, within their own mind, within their own being, within their own prana and nervous system. And when they dig that channel, then naturally these negative forces are gonna travel along it. So you have to do it basically by accepting certain negative things within and doing certain negative actions without, to make this channel so clear for a demon-like thing to come and influence you. But anyway.
So why? Okay, I guess this is a pretty basic question, but
yeah.
No one really ever asks why do demons exist?
Originally in Hinduism, and this is originally going back to basically the Big Bang-like creation of the universe, which is a day of Brahma. And then there's also an equal day, a night of Brahma, that the universe comes back in. But anyway, their original task, the demon's task, was to oversee Earth and the dimensions, to basically be guardians. But just be guardians, not to actually own the lower dimensions or the higher dimensions, their higher being the material realm. They were supposed to guard, and then that's why they were made. But eventually they started to covet what they were guarding. They decided to follow the supreme, I guess you could say, negative counterbalance to God. In Hinduism, it's Maya. And Paramahansa Yogananda believes that it's actual conscious force. But in Maya not being a conscious force, it's more of a primordial, natural force of illusion. But the demons started to, by the leading of this counterbalance force, decided that they were going to try and own the lower realms and the material realm. So they decided that what they were guarding would be theirs, and then they started working towards that. And that's when chaos really was introduced to this material realm. Was that when the guardians started to covet, and the demons are also kind of guardians of the lower realms that people naturally go to when they decide to do certain actions or become a certain person. And that soul eventually comes up, just like the souls of demons will eventually come up once their being realizes the nature of things. But somebody had to be they had to run the lower realms, the lower dimensions. So they were created to kind of run the lower dimensions and also to guard those dimensions and the material realm, but then they started to covet, so that's why they had to be pushed out, and by, I guess you could say, the angels of the four directions, if we're looking at Christianity. But there's various equivalencies to Raphael, Gabriel, and Michael and the like in other religions. Four directions. Yeah.
So, I mean, I like to shed some color on this too, because instead of just going through my notes here, what I would like to do is just kind of give you a presentation of what I think, and I want to hear what your response on what my conclusion is. So my conclusion is, after studying human anatomy, psychology, right, angels, demons, the Christian Bible, a little bit of Hinduism, so can you say for certain that that humans were designed to kill? Or do they have the potential to kill? Or is it, so what I think it is that humans were not designed to do that. However, I think we talked about separation from God. When you become so separated from God that it's like a gateway, you allow these evil energies to...
So maybe the further away you get, the lesser the connection with God, the more the connection with the evil counterbalance.
Counterbalance?
Well, we're talking about something like Lucifer, Satan, the ultimate counterbalance. But I mean, there's other names for it in other traditions and religions. But
right, because if we were created, if we according to Hinduism, if every atom, if we are all part of God, seeking our way back to God.
Yeah. So being created is kind of a problem in Hinduism. Ultimately, we're just an extension. We're not necessarily created as a separate thing. So, anyway, go ahead.
So, I mean, yeah, that's the line that I want to explore that I don't think anyone really has an answer to. Because I think that ultimately, if we're a part of God, then we were created in a way that it's impossible for us to kill or to hurt to hurt someone else, right?
In the Bhagavad Gita, it says, for instance, he who thinks that he is a slayer or the slain are both wrong. I am the slayer and the slain. We had this idea of things that were created a certain way, but this begs the idea of us being separate from God. So I think the thing that you have to address before you get to how we were created is if we were created. We weren't, to me, we weren't created, but we're an extension of God, which a lot of Hindus believe. So it's like, okay, so you have these extensions of God that we are, like human souls. There are every other soul behind everything. And there are varying degrees of Maya attached to the varying levels of God. So, like, those that are further away from God, they just have more Maya, more illusion surrounding that piece of God that they are. And as you get closer and closer to God, really it's more about dispelling the darkness and the ignorance, the illusion and the delusion. And you slowly start to realize your true nature. It's not that even really demons exist in the ultimate sense. They just have more illusion and delusion surrounding their consciousness. Now, as far as God expanding, why did he expand to basically become people that could kill other parts of himself? I mean, maybe that's what you're getting at. Is that what you're getting at?
No.
Oh, okay. Go ahead.
No. I'm just saying, what is that line that it's undefined? We haven't defined it. I don't think anyone has really. Look, Anybody can come up with some kind of research or notes or documentation on what that line is, or what that crossover is when people decide to
Kill.
Well,
Murder.
I mean, it's the easiest one, right? To kill, right, or to murder.
To hurt others.
Yeah, how can you, right? How do you feel like?
So one piece of God. Why would one piece of God hurt another piece of God, or murder another piece of God? If we're all pieces of God, for instance, and this is from my understanding.
Right. So it's a battle.
The thing is, it's God basically uses Maya and illusion to isolate his pieces of himself, right? And every piece of him has to work his way back up into complete union with him. So it's like my arm being in a cloud, and the arm slowly has to come back towards outside of the cloud of illusion. Now, in order for us to have free choice, there must be Maya illusion to the idea that we can kill, that we can hurt each other. And then that's what we're captivated by. We're captivated by the illusion that we can hurt each other. When in reality, this play that's going on to where we can kill somebody and then they don't live anymore, that is ultimately illusion. Nothing ultimately that is a part of God can be destroyed. No part of God can be destroyed. It's just the illusion of destruction that Maya brings when the pieces of God are isolated by that cloud of illusion the further away you get from God. So basically, in order for God to have pieces of himself that have free choice and working their way back to him, he has to create this grand illusion that in all these different dimensions and all these different universes, beings can kill each other. People can die. People can go out of existence. And ultimately, that is not true. Nobody can be harmed and nobody can die. It's just the illusion of death and the illusion of harming. Not that it doesn't feel real. It's just that ultimately nothing ends. And for us to, let's say I decided that I really hated somebody I wanted to kill them, and then I killed them. The whole thing would be illusion because I don't really want to kill somebody. It's just the illusion that I would gain something from it, just like with every other killer, that they would enjoy when they actually don't. It's just the illusion that they enjoy, the lies that they tell themselves. And then that person passes on into another form. That whole situation is just seeped in illusion. None of it actually exists. And in truth, the only choices that we make that are real are the ones to get out and away from material existence. But anyway, go ahead. It's hard to swallow, and it's hard to digest because we're so much founded in material existence.
Yeah,
it's hard to see past it.
And on one hand, I understand what you mean. On the other hand, I see it as that separation when you decide. Well, I don't know if you truly decide to be separated from God, or if that's something it's by a grander design. Because
it's not possible to be separate from God. Just the illusion of separation, in my opinion.
Right, but see, then what happens which it makes sense, but then we're basically discounting it, like saying that by saying that it's part of illusion, we're discounting it because what is the ultimate reason? Should these people?
Would God create something that could be destroyed, and why?
Well, it says that. Biblically, it says that God is not. He has released the title of this world, this universe, to Satan, to the great deceiver, right?
I wouldn't agree that the Bible says that, but I mean, he wouldn't release it.
Well, that's what Jesus said that. He said that.
Jesus said that he released the title to Satan.
Well, I mean, in other words, that's not what he said. What he
said. You gotta give me the actual quote, otherwise.
What he said specifically was that I don't know who he was talking to specifically, but he says, "You are not part of this world. The world hates you. If the world would love you, it would take you of its own. But I have chosen you out of the world."
Okay. Well, that has to do with inner choice. Being chosen is not that Jesus comes and says, "Okay, you get to be saved," and you don't. And let's say these people are identical. That would be choice. But these people have chosen to be one way or another. So really, people choose their way into punishment or reward. They choose their way, they develop karma, and then they suffer the punishment or reward of their actions.
Okay.
So, I don't know if there's really, Jesus, chooses people as much as people work their way by their choices into their situation. And of course, in Hinduism, hell isn't forever, but like it might be a temporary point of punishment for a while, then you come back up. Of course, not every Hindu believes that, but in a lot of Hindu texts it says that.
Right, and that's the thing. I think anybody on a journey, spiritual journey, they're going to have to adopt some philosophies, and it's a really interesting journey, because you have to say to yourself, well, in Hinduism, right, you believe you're trying to go consciously rise.
You're trying to basically work your way towards God. Now, there's room for mercy. Mm-hmm. I mean, and the mercy is that we get to choose and have life after life until we get it right. But you have to work towards God. I mean, it's not about, you can't just say, okay, well...
It's not a free ticket.
Yeah, I mean, you can't just say, okay, well, I'm Christian now, so automatically I'm going to heaven. Or like, it's like being part of a company, and like I said earlier, like, okay, I work for Google. Now I can just walk into the CEO's office and be the CEO, or I can just walk into the CEO's lounge and just live there and just like chill there forever. When in fact you have to work your way into a position where you can have that enjoyment. So even if Google might not fire you, which is kind of like in Hinduism, like you won't be just basically sent to hell forever. You'll still have to work your way up from wherever you are. So you don't want to be maybe a bagger for. This is, maybe Google doesn't have baggers, but like, let's just say you're working in a kitchen in Google. Even if they don't fire you, you're still going to have to work your way back up. You're going to have to work your way up, actually.
Okay. So in conclusion, I believe that there's some cross currents between Hinduism and Christianity, which I'm still trying to sort out.
Me too.
And I believe that the human mind, let's just forget about the body. Let's just say I believe the human mind was created perfectly, and that it does not, by its inherent nature, have the ability to kill. So if you follow that,
so then why does it kill?
Because that when you look at the universe and the matter, and if the shit that's going on in like CERN, that there's actually like we live in a universe that is multi-dimensional.
So,
right.
So like we don't have the ability to kill, then why do people kill? Like how can they if we don't have the ability?
That's the thing. That's the line that I don't think anyone really knows about. The only conclusion that I can draw is that when you become separated from God, the transformation of your mind, the energy, the way.
So then there is an ability. So okay, this gets back to the tree of good and evil.
Yeah.
Like, why would God create the tree of good and evil? Why would God create evil? So he created the tree of good and evil. Why would he even create that tree for there to be a choice? Like why would he do that?
Why,
so like if he created us perfectly, why would he create the ability for us to not be perfect by creating the tree of good and evil?
Okay, because I think that the original man was not just a boy. He was a grown man. Because there, you remember I was telling you about the legend of the Jews? It kind of it's like extrapolates on some of the biblical events, and one of the readings was that the creation, Satan was supposed to be the most glorious being in heaven, and
the head angel, basically.
Right. So, but when man was created, he was jealous, and he was ordered to bow down, and
man was created with free choice. That's why Satan was jealous, because the angels didn't have free choice.
Right.
Lucifer, Satan, whatever. Well, at that time, Lucifer, before it became Satan, he was like the first in the story, and in like basically the allegory without the metaphysical explanation. Lucifer was the first angel to actually choose something else, because every other angel was created without the ability to have free choice like man. So.
No, we were all given free choice. The angels and humans were given.
Well,
that's
look,
part of being a part of creation.
But the angels didn't just. The angels didn't just choose like, okay. Some of them were like, okay, I'm going to be against God. I'm going to be with God. Lucifer was the milestone to where there was a separation, and that's where the sides like became two sides. Other angels, there wasn't any other angel that was like, okay, I'm not with God or Lucifer. I'm just going to be out there. So in reality, it's possible that Lucifer is the only one with free choice, because there aren't any angels that chose a third option. They like a third of the angels chose Lucifer, and then 2/3 chose God, right? Mm-hmm. So I mean, like, if all angels had free choice, then wouldn't one of them be like, okay, well, I'm just forget both these groups, let me just go away? And so, I mean,
here's the thing though, Satan knew in advance. I'm not saying this to be ugly, okay?
Yeah.
We don't give credit to Satan. Not that he deserves credit, but before his fall, we don't give credit to him in the fact that he foresaw the nature of human and that we were sinners. And
but why did God create us if we were sinners?
This is speculation. This is complete speculation. But that's why he wouldn't bow down.
But why did God create sinners then?
That's why it's the battle in heaven. It's the whole thing about.
But why did God create sinners? If we're sinners, then why did he create
because
sinners?
Of repentance.
So God willfully created sinners.
He made us at a level higher than the angels, but we have this tendency to sin, and because of grace and repentance.
So he made us with a tendency to sin.
No, not that he.
But we have the ability to sin.
Why
did he create us with the ability to sin and then create the tree of good and evil?
The ability to sin and the actuality of free choice. It coincides with each. You cannot have free choice without free will without having.
Okay, but why did he make the choice evil? Like, why did he create evil? Like, for instance, like
he didn't create evil.
He created the tree of good and evil, right?
He didn't create evil. It's
the
after effect of
why
sin.
did he create the tree of good and evil? What was the point of? Why didn't he just create a good tree?
Oh, let's see. I think that God was trying to grow with us spiritually, and that he was going to share the knowledge of the tree of good and evil.
He was going to grow with us?
He was going to walk. It was a walk with us spiritually, and we didn't give him a chance to. We were never given a chance.
So God was very much bound by time, and he was going to evolve with us?
No, I wouldn't say it like that. I would just think that he was going to explain to us spiritually. He was going to walk with us, and it was going to be a spiritual walk with us, and that he was going to explain to us. But we took it upon ourselves to listen to Satan. You will be as gods, and your eyes will be. Which was all true. He didn't lie. Satan didn't lie. He said the truth. That's why it's so weird. Like,
okay, so God created the tree of good and evil, and the ability for us to basically choose the evil part of the tree of good and evil, and then he allowed Satan to have the ability to enter into the garden. Why did he allow Satan into the garden? Because the creation man, Adam at that time was a grown man. He wasn't a child. So it's part of free choice.
So it's like it's walking with God spiritually. God, by his nature, will test the deepest levels of the heart. That's his characteristics.
So he created evil.
No, he did not create evil.
What then how did he create a tree of good and evil? So he's like, okay, Satan, you created. Let's say Satan created evil, right. But he made the tree of good and evil. So just going by
I guess you're right. Yeah, he created evil. Yeah. But it's not evil as like a creation. The way we think of evil, it was created for a good reason. I think that's the limited knowledge I have about it.
For the freedom of choice is what you're saying.
Not for the freedom of choice. It was just God's characteristic. He tests the lowest level of your heart, the deepest level of your heart.
Well, God created us, so he knows the deepest level. But I mean,
so getting back to this is like, are we inherently evil? If you look at this and you try to find light, I don't think that we are. It's the.
I don't think we are either.
I don't think that.
I think it's illusion and delusion that makes us act in evil ways. I think that acting in a cruel manner is a better representation of what evil is than like evil actually existing. I think acting in a cruel way or an evil way, as far as just evil being like a thing, is more true to reality. I don't think like evil has its own separate thing. Like, okay, this thing is evil. I think that we can act in ways that are corrupt, that are basically can be considered evil.
Do you think it's fair that we were tested in the garden like that?
I don't. Honestly, dude, I don't. Believe in the story. I don't believe in the story like you. Look.
If the story was real, if it was real,
Do I think it's fair?
No, I'm just saying.
It wouldn't matter if I think it's fair.
If it's, let's just say hypothetically it was real. Do you think it's fair?
I think that it's a
for someone to,
well, let me say this first because I haven't said this for the video, but I think that in Hinduism, the tree of good and evil is really the nervous system, and once we as energy beings came down into the material realm, we were first the nervous system, and then basically choosing materiality, we started to realize that we were naked because we actually had physical flesh bodies now. And the idea of good and evil became apparent because duality exists in the material realm, whereas in higher realms, duality does not exist. So that's the tree of good and evil, being able to use the nervous system to either go down the nervous system, the downward pull, or the upward pull. And then if we choose the downward pull, then you're choosing the evil advantage, I guess you could say, or the evil side of how the nervous system can work. Or if you choose to go up, if you choose to raise your consciousness, then you're choosing to not eat of the tree of good and evil, I guess you could say. But anyway, and it might be connected to the pineal gland as well. But anyway, what was your original question? Do I think that it's fair that hypothetically?
So do you view what Satan said as a positive comment or a negative comment?
Satan said about what? Like what did he say?
What did he say exactly? Try to.
Give me like just a little bit.
Did God surely say that you will die? I don't know how it's said.
You will have the ability to die if you eat of the tree of good and evil, because then you.
That's what he said.
Because you become part of duality.
He questioned what he made us.
Yeah.
Question, doubt whether what God said was correct or not. So, did God surely say that you shall die? Did he not tell you that your eyes will be open? I mean, he didn't really lie, right?
Satan or God?
No,
neither one of them lied. But.
No, I don't think Satan lied. That's why it was a challenge. You can consider it a challenge.
So you get to choose. So it's really a free choice. Like the original choice was like, okay, how are you gonna ascend, up or down? And then that's our choice that not just Adam and Eve had, but we get to choose how we use the nervous system. So when we're talking about original sin doesn't apply in the way that, as far as Hindus go, the original sin doesn't apply in the way that Christians think about it. But you get to choose in your own life if you're going to go up or down the nervous system, expand your consciousness, or be more and more obsessed with material and associated with material and desirous of material and fearing your material end. But anyway, go ahead.
So bottom line is that there's always going to be in your exploration of religion, whatever religion it is, you're always going to come to a line, and you got to hammer that, you got to like hammer that line out and figure it out until you really come to your own conclusion of what you think. But I think that what happened in the garden, if you subscribe to the story,
let's assume that it's literally true, just for the sake of what you're saying.
You're going to be challenged in life, and so how do you rise up to a higher consciousness so that you don't fall, kind of like symbolically how Adam and Eve fell in the garden, and death was the consequence. Death is the
ability to die was the consequence, because like nobody could die before they chose material. Anyway, yeah,
you're right. So that's the thing, and so you'll see if you think about this, if you ponder about this on a day-to-day basis, you'll see these lines happen, and you always go back and say, you know what? I did have a choice.
Vigilance, like it says in the Mahabharata, vigilance is immortality, negligence is death. So when Adam and Eve chose not to be vigilant anymore, chose not to exist as higher frequency beings, and chose to be material beings, and then that was the ability to die, so that was death.
And here's another thing.
That's just my view on it.
Here's one thing too that always sits in the back of my mind, and I always wondered, like in a beautiful world, in a world beyond reality, people, I'm sure they're like honest, right? So it's weird because you have to ask yourself, was Satan being honest? Because he could have said something else. He could like, hey, by the way,
so basically the question is, what was the degree of his truth? Like, maybe he was honest in one way and not truthful in another way.
I'm trying to remember what it says that he lied. They say that he's the great deceiver because he lied, but I don't think...
He only told part of the truth, I think. That's what...
Part of the truth. Okay.
He only told the part of the truth that would deceive. He didn't tell the whole truth.
And
then that's why... the whole truth was that if you eat of the tree of good and evil,
you're gonna die.
Yeah, you're gonna have the ability to, you're gonna actually be more confined. You're gonna be in this prison of the material body. He didn't tell the whole truth.
Okay.
So yeah, that's it. But anyway, we gotta wrap this up because it's about 30 minutes.
Yep.
But hey, thank you very much for watching. I hope these two different sides of this conversation have been interesting. And I hope to see all of you on my channel in the future. If you have any questions, any comments, anything you want to say, feel free to shoot down in the comment section below. But and make sure to hit that thumbs up if you thought any of this was good. And I will see all of you in the future.